I think that the 2 years we were married was the best time of our lives. Prior to getting married, we were in a relationship for 1 year. Once in a restaurant, I had probably been the one who had left my cell phone on my seat, so she approached me and gave it to me later. After offering her coffee and having such a pleasant meeting, we became close friends. I still remember her smile when we had coffee for the first time. We started dating a few months later, and 1 year after of dating, we got married. We got married after 1 year while I was working at a large forum on a handsome salary. We are still together after 2 years of marriage. During this time, we've been through different phases of our lives, but we were always been there for each other. We have shared many beautiful moments, and I'm grateful for having her in my life. As much as I could, I always tried to fulfill her wishes, even if they were the most expensive. I used to give her expensive bags, pendants, and rings. We also went on a lot of vacations, and she was able to experience the world in all its beauty. The bond between us is stronger than ever, and I'm thankful to have someone like her in my life. I did not count, but a turning point came when I realized I was giving her a lot of expensive things. I could not comprehend being betrayed in love, so it was impossible for me to comprehend what was going on. Anyway, it all began a month ago when I was called by my wife and my cousin, and his wife. At the time, my cousin was living in another city and told me his business was destroyed. I was stunned when I heard that. I decided to have him and his wife live with me until they were financially stable. I invited them to stay with me and they accepted. Initially, I thought that I was doing the right thing by helping them out, but I soon realized that I was being taken advantage of. I started to feel like I was being taken for granted, and this made me realize that I needed to take a step back and assess the situation. I had to set some boundaries and make it clear that they were not to take advantage of my generosity. I also had to remind myself that I was helping them because I wanted to, not because I had to. As my wife fought with me to not allow them to live in our house, I told her that I would be helping her in her establishment for a few weeks or even months, and that they would then move out. I told her I would help her with her establishment for a while. For now, she agreed. This was a difficult decision, but I was determined to make it work. I said to her that I knew that once they moved out, we would have our peace back and our life could go back to normal. I was ready to do whatever it took me to make it happen. There is no denying that the cause of the problem can be traced back to my wife. I had never imagined that my wife would do such a thing. I had to accept that this was my fault. It was once I came home from my office because my cousin and wife were living in our house. It was obvious that I would come back home and meet my cousin. However, that day neither my wife nor my cousin were at home. I was surprised and a little worried, wondering where they had gone. I searched around the house, but there was no sign of them. I decided to call my cousin to check if they were all right. His wife was home and she too left for her job when I arrived. I asked her if she had any idea where my wife and cousin could be. She said that my wife had gone out for shopping and his cousin also went to do something 30 minutes ago. I was relieved. When I called my wife, she did not answer my call. As I was waiting for her to pick up my phone, I thought I should wait. After waiting for over 2 hours, I attempted to get in touch with her, but she did not answer my call for once. I went to the roof of my house to get something. On the corner of my street, I saw my wife's car shop and my cousin get out of it. And then my cousin moved the car towards my garage while I was watching it. This was quite strange to me when it happened. I suddenly found myself on the stairs to leave the house. She got out of the car. When I asked her where she was, she told me she was shopping. In fact, she had a bag in her hands. However, I asked her why she was in your car since I had seen him getting out of it. She was speechless when I asked her that question. In my opinion, that expression was an indication that something like her crime had been caught. I laughed strangely and she told me that she was coming from another street and so she gave him a ride home. He then went to meet someone on the street. During that time, I did not understand what game they were playing with me at the time. She was very embarrassed and told me she had to go. I let her go and she left quickly. I was still suspicious about what was happening, but I decided to let it go. Among the members of my family, my cousin was the only person that was close to me, and we were good friends as well, so there was no reason for me to doubt his loyalty to me in the least. I trusted him with all my secrets, shared my joys and sorrows with him, and even asked for advice when I needed it. I believed he would be loyal to me until the end. However, I was wrong. He betrayed me in the worst way possible, and it was a huge shock to me. I felt betrayed and hurt, and it took me a long time to get over it. Anyway, the second incident occurred when all decided to go to a party again after a long time. The party was held on a Friday evening at the house of one of our common friends. After the party, my cousin brought me a drink. I refused to drink it because I knew I was going to be the driver, so I decided not to drink. I was forced to drink. However, after that, my wife forced me to drink. After I drank, my wife took me to the dance floor and we started dancing. While dancing, I became unconscious and I don't know what happened to me. My mind is flooded with a memory of that evening when my wife and my cousin were laying in bed together, enjoying their time together. I had no idea what had occurred to me then, and I awoke with a severe headache. The next day, I found myself laying in bed in my own home. It was very strange for me. I had gone to a party and now I was laying in bed. I had no idea what had happened last night. Last night I remember seeing my wife and cousin in bed. I walked out of the room and called my wife's name. She rushed out of the bathroom and she asked me what had happened. I could not remember what had happened and I had no idea how I got home. I asked my wife what happened but she did not know either. I was confused and scared. I asked what happened last night and you cheated on me with my cousin. She pushed me back and said, "What the hell are you talking about? Last night you drank heavily and then your cousin dropped you off at home and then he and his wife spent the whole night outside." She asked me, "Are you insane? How can you say that?" I grew worried that perhaps it might have been a nightmare, so I ignored it. I apologized to her, hugged her, and told her that I had seen a nightmare. Afterwards, she said, "Go and get fresh. I made breakfast for you." I ignored that incident at the time, but after that day, I kept noticing those nightmares flash back all day long. I couldn't take it anymore, so I told her everything about the nightmare. She hugged me and said, "It's okay, you're not insane. It's just a bad dream, it will pass." I felt relieved and we hugged each other for a long time. While I was trying to sleep in 2 days ago, after drinking heavily, my wife came to me in the middle of the night. She asked me if I could make out a check for charity or child support because she wanted to donate some money. When I said that I would sign the check tomorrow, she insisted, saying that she had to leave early in the morning or perhaps you would forget to sign. So I signed that check on that time. I saw that it was a blank check. I was surprised that she had brought a blank check with her. I signed it and gave it to her, not really knowing what it was for. She thanked me and said she would fill in the details later. I didn't ask her how much money she got. I'd forgotten about the check afterwards as well. It was noon one day when I came home. I opened my door and get inside, but it wasn't my usual time to come home at noon. As I approached my bedroom, I noticed that it was closed. I knocked on the door, but my wife did not answer. As I knocked again, my wife opened the door and she was sweating. I asked her what had happened and she told me that she was doing yoga and that is why she was panting and sweating. She then asked me if I had remembered to pay the electricity bill. I realized that I had forgotten about it completely and I quickly went to check my bank account. Luckily, I had already paid it the week before. It was quite odd. I went to the washroom. The window was open when I entered the washroom. Suddenly, I noticed that there was a strange smell coming from the cupboard. I opened it and saw my wife's panty was the same one she had wore before the morning. We'd been very open to each other, and so she wore the panty in front of me that morning. I smelled the panty and it smelled awful. The smell was strange. I don't know what she had done, but it was unusual. I went out and asked her what was going on. It is so stinky because she had premenstrual. This caused a strange sticking secretion. She was embarrassed and tried to hide it from me. I told her not to be ashamed and that it was normal. We hugged each other and she thanked me for understanding. That's why the smell. When I asked her about the doctor, she said, "Don't worry, I'm taking my medication." I understood that and I left the room. As soon as I stepped out of my room, my cousin came back to me. I asked him where he was and he said he was going to meet someone for his job. As he was setting up, I noticed a lipstick mark on his lower neck. I asked him where he was and he said he was with his friend. My laugh was that your neck was telling me something else, so I said, "Really? I don't think so." It wasn't until he went to the room that I understood what had happened to him. I thought he might be depressed due to his job. After that, I again went back to my room to get my laptop. I talked to my wife for a bit around my new routes for a project. I noticed something that made me fall into the river of thought, as it was that I noticed that the lipstick color on my wife's face was exactly the same as the mark on my cousin's neck. It made me astonished. I had no idea what had happened to me, but that clue stuck in my head. Despite the fact that she had left the room, I was still in the room thinking about her lipstick. I tried to think for a long time, thinking maybe this was a misinterpretation. However, this was not the first time I felt such an awful vibe with my cousin. It was something else all the same. I thought to ask my cousin, but I had no solid idea, so I thought I'd play a game to catch them both. If I was thinking right, I devised a plan to test their feelings for each other and waited for the right moment to execute it. By the end of the day, I had my answer. I hit a camp to find out what was going on. In the morning, I told her that I would be coming home late in the evening. However, I was in a trap, as I had to hand over a payment to my client. I went to the bank to withdraw the money, but when I gave the check to the manager, he told me I only had $5,000 in my account. It was shocking. I got nervous and asked where the hell money was. He replied that 3 days ago my wife had come and withdrawn everything from the account. Although I didn't know how to ask her, I was wondering why she did that. Therefore, I thought I would conform to her at a suitable moment. After spending the whole day at work and then in a pub, I constantly kept an eye on the recording of my bedroom. Nothing had happened, but at night at about 12:47, I saw my cousin walking into my bedroom. She then got into bed and they did intimate activities. My mind blew and my feet slipped from my feet as if I was frozen in place. I rushed to my home and screamed my cousin's name and my wife's name. Until then, they had not done anything. I was in the lounge and screaming my wife's name. I first asked my wife what she had done with such a large sum of money. As she was refusing to withdraw any money, I reminded her that I had never mentioned that you were withdrawing money. My wife then admitted to taking the money and explained that she had done with it. She apologized for not telling me sooner and promised to always be honest with me in the future. I told her shut her mouth. Then I showed the recording to my cousin's wife, who began screaming and shouting at me. My cousin's wife then stormed out of the room, leaving my wife and I alone. She told him that she was leaving and that she needed a divorce. After that, she left and I kicked my cousin out of the house without any discussion or listening. I collapsed on the couch, feeling overwhelmed. I had no idea what had just happened or why it had happened. All I knew was that I had to find a way to fix this mess. I didn't say a word to my wife because I felt there was nothing left to say. I went to another room and that's all I could think about. I sat there alone, feeling a mix of emotions. I was angry at my cousin for what he did, But ultimately, I felt sadness for the broken relationship I had with my loved ones. During the early hours of that morning, I called the police to report her fraud. In short, I filed a case against her. However, my lawyer and I managed to find more few evidences, and finally she was sentenced to 10 years in prison. She was taken away. I felt a sense of relief. I knew justice had been served. I could now move on with my life and put the whole incident behind me. Last time I saw her in court, she begged me to forgive her, and I just smiled and asked, "How the hell do you expect me to even see you?" She had no answer for that. I walked away. I'd finally found closure. I was ready to start a new chapter of my life. I had the opportunity to make a fresh start, and I was determined to make the best of it. I knew I had to be strong and focused on the future, so I decided to put this experience behind me.